Now, whenever we're working with a heavy bag, especially with something like head movement, it's a really tricky task to do. And the reason for that is because nobody's throwing back at me, right? I don't have that constant kind of barrier that I have to look past, okay? So when we start working with our head movement on the heavy bag, one of the things that we want to start looking out for is forming good habits. And this has to do with where my head is positioned for stuff like when I slip, okay? So we're going to start with the drill exclusively for our slips. So I'm in my boxing stance, right? And anytime I slip, I'm taking my head off that center line, right down the middle, moving to one side or the other, all right? Both those hands stay on my chin so that I'm nice and protected, okay? One of the things that people struggle with when they're working on their slips is how far they need to slip, all right? And the answer to that question is I have to slip the width of somebody's glove, right? I have to slip just enough for that glove to come right over my shoulder off toward either side, okay? So when we're doing this, when we're working on the heavy bag, the best way that we can kind of simulate this is by looking just past the bag. So when I'm working my heavy bag right here, I'm aligned straight forward on that bag. Whenever I'm practicing a slip, I'm taking my head off. I can look just past the bag and then I'm coming right back up. All right. Now this gives us a really good baseline for figuring out how far we need to slip and how far is too far. Let's get into our next drill. So for this next one, you are going to need a wrap, all right? This is one of my favorite ways that we can actually work head movement on the heavy bag because, like I stated before, right, you need that obstacle in order to actually work on head movement. And that's what this provides, all right? So what we're going to do is we're going to string this wrap up and around my heavy bag and off to one of my poles over on this side of the bag rack. And the reason for that is because that gives me a really solid barrier where I can start working on those rolls at shoulder level. All right, awesome. So we've got this wrap strung up on the heavy bag. It doesn't have to look pretty, okay? But we do want to make sure that we are having it at the right level, right? So when I have that wrap up on that heavy bag, I want it to be resting just on top of my shoulder, about the same height as something called a slip line, right? Which is where we practice those rolls. We get to practice those rolls underneath this barrier, okay? So the other nice thing about this too is because it's coming in just that straight line, right? It kind of simulates having those ones and twos coming your way. So if I'm working the heavy bag, this is a great opportunity for me to start adding some head movement into my combos, right? So let's say I have that combo 1-2-1 roll 3, right? Now all of a sudden I've got my 1-2-1, placing those right up to the head, and then I'm rolling underneath and looking for that 3 off to the side, okay? As soon as I start practicing those rolls, right, it makes me line myself up trying to land that wrap right on top of my opposite shoulder, okay? So if I'm working the outside, 1-2-1, roll 1, right? 1-2, roll 6-3, right? Whatever it is, I can start maneuvering around that barrier where that wrap is. And now for this next drill, we are going to be practicing moving our heads after throwing combos. So one of the things that's so awesome about boxing, right, is my ability to start to anticipate and predict what's coming next my way, right? So I know that if I throw with one side, more often than not, as long as that other hand's up on my chin, then something's probably going to be coming back to the side I just threw with, right? That's a risk I'm going to take. So what I want to do by habit is I want to practice slipping or rolling toward that same side, all right? So if I've got my hands up on my chin, I just threw my 2, I'm rolling back that opposite way, right? I'm slipping that same way, okay? So another drill that we can do on these heavy bags is whatever combo you are working, you can tag head movement onto the end. All right, so if I'm in front of that heavy bag right here, if I'm throwing my combos of 1-2-1, right, nice and simple, then I can tag a roll onto the end, 1-2-1, I'm rolling right after, right, practicing just a little bit of that movement rather than staying stationary in one spot and just kind of hanging out, right? I get to start thinking about that anticipated shot that's coming my way as soon as I'm done throwing. Awesome, you guys. So these are 3 tips that I use on the heavy bag to work on my head movement. So if you guys have any other ideas for videos that you'd like to see, more tips, more drills, you can put them in the comments. Thank you guys so much.